So most of the lighting work is done with VRay lights. Let's create a simple teapot and see how the VRay light works. Okay, so basic teapot, basic VRay physical camera. And let's see how it looks. So right now it's black because we don't have any light sources in the scene. Let's create a VRay light and see how it looks. And create a nice and big softbox type of light. Have a nice big reflection and light the teapot. Because it looks a bit dark, that's because our camera is not adjusted for the exposure. For example, I want to increase the exposure, and I can do that by lowering the shutter speed. For example, let's set it at 50, and it looks much better now. And one more thing I like to do in my cameras is set them to neutral, and this way I don't have any color cast from the camera, and the lights look like they're supposed to look. Okay, so that's the basic render. It's a bit hard to judge from this teapot without any material. So let's create the basic VRay material. Well, maybe let's make it blue. And reflective. Alright. And now you can see the reflections of the light as well as of the environment. So basic sort of polished plastic or ceramic material, and there you have it. So the basic VRay light works fine for most of the situations, but in studio lighting, one thing I don't like about it is how crisp it is. Look at the borders, it's perfectly sharp all the way around. I'm gonna copy my camera and make a quick render looking at the light. Alright, and as you can see, it's a perfectly white rectangle. No color changes, no brightness changes. It looks very artificial. So there are a couple of ways you can fix it. So the easiest way is to use a texture. So how do you do that? You open up your material editor and create a new map in an empty slot. And for the texture, I like to use the gradient ramp. Alright, so right now if you drag and drop it in the texture slot of the light and make an instance, you'll see how it affects the light. So this is a really cool effect, but not quite what we're looking for. What we're looking for is a slightly darker light around the edges and brighter in the center. So you can change the gradient type to box, set the center to white, edges to black, and look at that. Okay, so the transition is a bit too strong, so let's move it over here and brighten it up like that. Okay, I'm also going to give it a slightly yellow color tint as it comes nearer to the edge. And there you have it. It looks much better than before. Let's look from the second camera and notice the reflection. It's not so crisp anymore. It has a slight fall off at the edges. It looks much more natural. So this technique works fine when you have a black background for your renders. If you change the background to something lighter, Let's make it even lighter. You can see a little problem here. The edge where we use the black color is darker than the background. This might look a bit unnatural in some cases. I'm going to exaggerate the effect slightly by increasing the black area, just so you can see what I'm talking about. Alright, now look at this dark edge. It doesn't look right, and it looks especially wrong in the reflections. I'm going to go closer. And you can see this sort of a dark outline around the reflection. It looks unnatural, especially if the reflection is larger. For example, I'm gonna scale it up. And look at it again. And look at this weird edge. That doesn't look right. So what you can do in this case is you can replace the VRay light with a regular plane. Okay, let's move it in the same place. Rotate it. Let's turn off the light. And we need to flip the normals of the plane so they're pointing towards the teapot. Okay, and now for this plane we're going to use a VRay light material. So create a VRay light material, assign it. It's a bit too weak. Let's increase the setting to something like 30. Right, and with basic VRay light material, what you have is the same crisp outline as you would have with the regular VRay light. I'm just going to turn on the direct illumination to make the calculations more accurate. And now I'm going to show you how to use the texture with VRay light. So you have a couple of options here. The easiest one is by using the same gradient map in the opacity slot. Make an instance and make sure you enable multiply color by opacity. And now when you render, you have a very nice smooth transition from the light to background. And notice there are no dark outlines anymore. Okay, if you don't use the multiply color by opacity, you're going to have an effect like this, which is pretty much unusable. Right, so in many cases when you have a lighter background, it's useful to use a regular plane with VRay light material. You can make it more advanced, better looking by using mix maps, for example. Okay, so for example, let's change the gradient ramp to mix. Keep old map as submap. And I'm gonna cut my gradient ramp and paste it in the mix amount. Okay, and in the white color slot, for example, I'm gonna set up a noise. Let's look at the light and see how it looks. And you can see it's not so perfect anymore. Some parts are darker, some are lighter. Which maybe the effect is too strong. And let's reduce noise size and see how it looks. Okay. It's a nice uneven looking light, much more natural than a regular VRay plane light. Alright. And you can see the effect in the reflections as well. I think it might be a bit too patchy. You can change that by adjusting the value of your darkest noise color. I think that's just about right. Okay. So another way you can simulate a very similar effect is by using a diffuser plane. For example, okay, let's get rid of this light, and let's change the plane to regular VRay material. Okay, let's hide it for now, and I'm going to create a VRay sphere light. Okay, have a little problem here. Right, so it's turned off, and that's why we can't see it. Right, just turn it on, and there you have it. So an ugly white crisp spot. Okay. So we can fix that by using a diffuser, just like in real photography. Let's move the light behind the diffuser plane and set up the diffuser material. So let's set the diffuse color pretty light, like 235 or so, and change it to VRay two-sided material. Make sure you keep the old material as submaterial. Okay, let's try again. And you have a much more natural diffused light over here. But it takes a bit longer to calculate cleanly. Okay, like that. And let's look at the plane now and see how it looks. Okay, a nice diffused lighting. You can also use a noise map in the diffuse slot of your VRay material. To 100. Okay. And re-render. And just a bit more variety. Alright. So this is a great way to diffuse some spherical lights. You might need to turn up the multiplier to get enough light in your scene. Okay, so let's look at some other things you can do with VRay lights. One useful feature I like is that you can make the lights invisible, make them affect reflections, speculars, diffuse, choose which ones to affect, which not. For example, let's say we have a background plane for a teapot. Right, and we can use VRay light to add a highlight on that background. For example, I'm going to use a regular plain light here. Okay, maybe rotate like this. And render. Okay, so you can see you can light the background easily, but you have this weird light visible in your render. That's easy thing to fix. Just turn on the invisible mode, and once you re-render, the light is gone. I mean, the dark spot is gone, but the light on the background is still visible. Okay. It's useful in some other scenarios as well. For example, you want to add some more light to a part of your object, but don't want an ugly reflection or any reflection at all. You can, even though it's invisible, it's still reflecting, but you can change that by removing the effects reflections and effect speculars. It's only going to add light and no reflections. So these are some nice features of VRay lights you can use to trick VRay into rendering the scene exactly like you want it. And another thing is you can use the exclude button to select which objects to include or exclude in your lighting. For example, I don't want to light the plane, so let's add that to the exclude list. Now it's only lighting the teapot and the plane stays like it should be dark. Okay, so you can use these tricks to manipulate your scene and create exactly the result you're looking for. Right, I'm going to show you some different setups you can make in the next few videos.